Folks, welcome to this Hall of Fame lunch 2021. I'll go ahead and ask Pastor Chris Shinnick. Not volume. I think our battery is dead, so I'll give you a volume this way in a moment. We'll have Pastor Chris Shinnick from Manna Church come up and lead us in our prayer and a pledge.
All right. Pleasure to be here. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for what this room represents. Not only a desire to compete, but a desire to give back to the community, especially for our young people. So we just ask your blessing on this food that we're about to partake of, certainly on this time, and may everything we do continue to honor you. We trust you. We need you. Pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, folks, thank you for being here. We'll enjoy lunch right now and get back to business at 12:30. All right, folks, I will bring us back to order. For those of you, please still enjoy your lunch as you're finishing. This event kicks off our 52nd year of our festivities, and we appreciate the vision of the men who founded the association 52 years ago, and then also the men who have founded this All Sports Hall of Fame 19 years ago to recognize and celebrate our many athletes in Northwest Florida. Each year's festivities for our banquet, we end each week with our award show, or this year it's an award show. Typically it is a dinner, but with the pandemic, we'll do things a little differently this year. But our keynote speaker is going to be Mr. Herschel Walker, and he'll be traveling in on Saturday to speak with us Saturday night. And this gentleman right here, who's the president this year, will be obsessing over those travel plans, any changes in the weather, etc., until Herschel's plane touches back down here on Saturday. There is no greater feeling for an all-sports president than when your speaker arrives. So we are off and running, and Don, we're proud of you. You're doing pretty good so far. So I'll do our introductions at the head table. Don Collins, our president this year. Then we have Pastor Chris Shinnick, who you heard from earlier. Mr. Ron Toole with IS4S, who's one of our speakers. And we'll recognize our sponsors now as well. And we do not have with us a couple of our sponsors, Chelco and then Oasis, usually represented by Steve Rhodes and Mr. Greg Esses. And then we have Mr. Sam Burkett with Torch, who stepped in and helped us out to sponsor. We also have Mr. Seth Stringer here from the Northwest Florida Daily News. Then we have Ms. Patty Fayard, who will be with our inductee, Coach Lionel Fayard. And then Mr. Charles McTear, who will be with our inductee, Mr. Houston McTear. Also in the back, I believe we have Jimmy Stewart, our new all-sports photographer, and we also have R.J. Murdoch back there running the videos for us. So alongside our all-sports president, we have the officers and board of directors. And so, gentlemen, would you please stand at this time? And these folks are also, along with our past presidents, our voters for this Hall of Fame class. So thank you, gentlemen. Our Hall of Fame committee, which is here in this room today, we have with us Mr. Eddie Taylor, Rube Manasco, Mr. Dick Cannon, Jimmy Campbell, Bill Kleinhelter, Steve Boswell, Bernard Johnson, and then myself are all the committee members. And Mr. David Oberleisen, who stood up a moment ago with the board, is our board liaison. And then with us here today, we have Ms. Betty Harrison representing her husband, Houston Harrison, who is kind of a chairman emeritus for us. We do have, I think, a few of our past inductees in the room. Again, Ms. Houston representing Betty. Tom Hammonds, saw him come in back there. It looked like you were standing up already just by waving that gigantic arm of yours. It's awesome. Rube Manasco is with us. Miss Kathy Combest, I believe, is here. And she has a guest. Coach Billy Michael. I don't think I missed anybody else. Did I? Anybody else I missed? Oh, Coach Ross, sorry. Don't tell anyone that I'll be in trouble if Mom finds out I missed you back there. So another one of our past inductees passed away this year. I'd like us all to remember Don Sutton. He passed away in January, and he was a 2003 inductee into this Hall of Fame. More famously, he was a 1998 inductee into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And Don was always very gracious to all sports. He was another two-time winner for us, and he was also a speaker for us at one time. So we just remember the passing of that inductee this year. So now I'll ask one more recognition. Our past presidents, if you'll please stand up. Again, these are the folks who make up our voting ranks for this. These men give up about 7 years of their lives in the officer ranks as they get ready to serve this organization in a leadership position, and then really countless other years serving, leading committees, etc. So thank you, past presidents. And now we'll move on to introduction of our two inductees. And first, I will call up Lionel Fayard Jr. to induct his father, Coach Fayard.
Thanks, Chad, and for everybody for taking time out of their schedules to attend today. It is a great honor and privilege for me to be able to induct my father and he was my coach into this Hall of Fame. It's a true honor. In preparation for this induction, I had I may suffer from ADD, so I bounce around. So I'll ask that you keep up with me. I wanted to look up what the definition of Hall of Fame is, and went straight to the dictionary. It's a group of individuals in a particular category, such as sport, who have been selected as particularly illustrious. And I had to go and look up what is illustrious. And so the definition of illustrious is notably or brilliantly outstanding because of dignity or achievements or actions. And that led me to kind of go through some things, characteristics, some actions and achievements of Coach Fayard and my dad. A notable achievement that everybody may be familiar with is the 1990 state championship team at Choctawhatchee High School. It was a great year, a great run, and still today stands as the only state championship in the school's 69-year history. So it's a crowning achievement. But there's a lot of things that go into coaching, and championships are one thing, but at the high school level, I think what's more important and what is more notable is the development of young men. And there's a lot that goes into that. But me watching from inside the house and watching from the time I could essentially walk until I left the house, I was a coach's son, it was a coach's family. But he had certain characteristics that were developed from his youth growing up in Biloxi, Mississippi. He fought daily with neighborhood kids or however it was, but had to fight to survive in the neighborhood. Tough group of kids and some great stories. But that developed toughness, courage, resiliency, all things that will help in a coaching career. He was a tireless worker, willing to take chances, and I'll start with one that I would say was a big chance. Was as a 35-year-old with 1 year of head coaching experience, I applying for the Choctawhatchee High School football job. It was in 1984, 1985. They had won or played for a state championship in 1977. Were voted through a spirit contest the most spirited high school in the country by, I believe it was 7-Up. It was a time and an era where Choctaw football was the only thing you did on a Friday night in Fort Walton Beach. And to throw your hat in the ring as a 35-year-old and think you've got what it takes to lead a program of that stature at that time, to chance taker. And so I believe that there was some divine intervention playing a part of that. He was selected for the job, and he took it, and 5 years later wins the state championship. But during that time, leading up to that, he would go and fly out to Oregon for a week and learn a new offense from a guy that created the double slot, misdirection, run and shoot offense. Had to do that to cater to our talent or lack thereof. We had to keep opponents guessing and be doing things differently. 3 years after he brought that to this area, was running it successfully. There wasn't a school in the county that wasn't running it, and in the Panhandle, so it was an innovation thing. Worked nonstop, whether it was grading every snap of every game, weed eating the football facility because it wasn't to his liking, painting. We could go in the field house and it was the cleanest place to take care of your business. You'd come down from the schoolhouse and go to the locker room because you know it was going to be spotless and clean. And whether it was winter conditioning, spring ball, summer, there was just nonstop work, and it was a great coaching staff. He had good coaches underneath him. But players would tell you it was designed to push you to your breaking point, push you to that point where you think you're going to quit or try to make you quit, but you kept fighting because you were fighting for the good of your teammates, the program, and it was those life lessons they were trying to teach, and it was spoken about at that time, but you didn't understand it, but you're going to develop the ability to never quit, never give up, because you're going to be a father that has to raise a family. You're going to be a dad that has to raise children. You have to be a husband. You have to be a leader in the community, a leader in the school. So it was the development of young men that makes them a Hall of Famer in my book. There's lots of stories that I could tell, but I don't want to take too much time. But I've had different players from different eras come up to me and tell me, some with tears in their eyes, what an impact he had on their lives at that point in high school. Whether it's a father figure, a friend, giving somebody a second chance, demanding more out of all of us. Just the same formula was used year in and year out for 30 years, and it produced teams that went 3-7. It produced teams that went 6-4, and it produced state championship. But it was all towards developing young men to be better people and leaders in the community. And so with that, I'll introduce Coach Lionel Fayard and as an inductee into the All Sports Hall of Fame for 2021.
Can we go again? Let's do it again. Keep it doing the right way. We got brown stuff in the back, Coach.
Need water?
Thank you, Lionel. I've seen a lot of friends out there, and I started my first time in Fort Walton Beach. Was in 1961. I was 12 years old. Our coach in Biloxi, Mississippi said, it's a Pee Wee All-Star, we're going to play a team in Florida. But the furthest I've been was to Ladd Stadium in Mobile. We get on the bus, no interstate then, and guess where we landed? Eglin Air Force Base. And we played a team called the Thunder Jets. And that's where I learned what real football is. They come out of a locker room, their field was painted. I'm standing there in the shoes that I wear to school. They march out in single file, walk all the way down the field. They had stripes on their helmets. They had stripes on their jerseys, their pants. They all had white socks. And it's the first time I got a good look at real cleats. And I mean that, I'll never forget that. The next thing, on the kickoff, I got down, I remember this, I got knocked down 3 times. I was on the right side, I come, a guy hit me, I run again, he hits me, and then I go to chasing. And I swear it would have been targeting. That's how I learned to play football. My junior high coach, Red Collins, and his assistant he's from Silicaca, Alabama, so you know what I'm fixing to tell you. And his assistant was Don Davis. He had a crooked flat top and square chin. All this fancy stretching and all. We didn't even warm up. We started with push-ups until you just about cry. Then we go to sit-ups. And then we had to do those old crazy leg lifts. And I mean, he'd hold us up so much it would kill you. We had 16 guys on the team. We beat everybody. But here's how we did it. He had a key drill, and I never did do it to any of my players. But he said, you get about 5-6 yards from the guy. He said, lock your neck, put your chin on there, and don't let it flop back. I don't want you to get whiplash. And we'd hold our hands up. He would get a running start at me, and he'd knock me. I don't know. I was a running back and a linebacker. Well, I was going against the best. The reason we beat everybody was that running back. I don't know how far he'd knock me. Then I'd get up. It was my turn. Boom. And if you didn't knock the guy down, you had to go again. So me and forehand, we got ours done. You had to hit above the waist, and there was no targeting rule. And he'd go to the next two, and then he'd come back to me. And I don't ever remember throwing a pass. I don't remember punting. I don't even know if we did that. But we'd do that. That's how I got. He taught me. I wanted to be like Leroy Jordan, because I used to watch at 4 o'clock the Bear Bryant show, at 5 o'clock the Chuck Jordan show. Channel 4 in black and white, Biloxi. I don't care what I was doing, I was going to watch it. And I wanted to be like Leroy Jordan, and he helped me. From that point on, I stayed fairly aggressive the rest of my career. So I learned what getting hit, playing real football is, and anyway, that's how I got my start in football. I have some people, let me tell you this. I learned how to, every year, like Jeff will tell you, the first thing you do in football is teach them how to get in their huddle. Well, we had a round huddle, and the quarterback would get on his knees. I swear to goodness, he had some Cajun in him, and he was tongue-tied. He'd get in the huddle, Bluff White Blue on 2, and all of us, we're in there. And we didn't have many plays, so we'd run. Red Collins, we was playing Hattiesburg. We was beating them, and I guess Red wanted to show out. He put in a trick play. He said, Lionel, you move to left half. Forehand, you get behind the center, and when Butch gets 5 yards past the tight end, you yell height. And Butch, he taught Butch, you couldn't put your hands under the center. And Butch, he had them, you know, like this on the thing, and he let them get our lines down, the Hattiesburg's down. Butch started walking and talking, tongue-tied to Coach Collins, and I don't know if it was the first trick play Hattiesburg seen or they were trying to figure out what Butch was saying. Every one of them stood up. We snapped the ball, and forehand could have ran all the way to Biloxi. So that's the first. I couldn't do that with Jeff because he wasn't tongue-tied. I'd like to introduce some guests. Mike Turner, and he's a graduate in '89. When at Choctaw, we never reloaded. We had to rebuild. I'd get sophomores and play them. Next year they were all right. Their third year they'd be ranked 12th in the country. 7 times our teams, 7 weeks, we were ranked in the top 20 in the United States of America. When we won the state, we were 7. Started out, we were 7, and then, you know, there was other times. And it wasn't coaching me, it was assistants I had. Don Arthur was, he won 3 state championships in West Virginia. He led his high school he went to West Virginia University, and he coached a year at Marshall. And guess what? He was a coal miner's son. Guess who was my butt kicker? You know, we had Johnny White. He played in Mississippi State. He won a championship at Pascagoula. He played with the 49ers. In his second year, he had a pick 6, 47-yard touchdown, and it helped San Francisco beat the Colts. Guess who threw it? Johnny U. He intercepted Johnny U. He was a secondary coach. Getting back to Mike Turner, Mike played 2 years and 8 both ways, a leader, a Christian guy, and he was tough as nails. He took it serious. When he got on that ball field, he meant business. And you heard about the clean field house. One day I walked through there. Our rule is, when you go in the field house, you sit down outside and bang your shoes and you carry them in. You could wear them out, but don't carry them in. I said, keep the paper off the floor, don't mess up the toilet, keep it clean. Well, I happened to go through there one day, and we were teaching them how to, you know, be responsible. You're responsible for something. And if you don't do it, there's consequences. Well, Mike, I went in there, I got some paper off the floor. It wasn't much, it really wasn't. I just wanted to stress a point. I'd go in my office and tear me a few pieces of paper up. We'd go on the practice field. I said, everybody up? And I said, guys, I dropped it. I said, every piece of paper I find from now on, it's a gasser. And a gasser, you start at the sideline, you go touch the other one, come back, go touch it, come back. And after practice, I used to do things, I guess it was like picking on them, or I was trying to, and I heard Mike in there, pick up the paper. Everybody spread out and pick up the paper. I was in the training room listening to them laughing. Somebody, I think the JB and Mike said, you JBs, you better not make me run. You pick up the paper. Go check the bag. I heard 3 or 4 of them. I went in there and we could have ate a meal on the floor. They even picked up grass, I think. But I think Mike said, you're not going to make me run. And Jeff Peters, he was our quarterback for the championship. I mean, he had winning on his mind. He gave everything he had. He was serious. We're playing Lake City, Columbia, second round. They must have more rednecks in Lake City than the whole world. We had to walk behind the bleachers and a concession stand to get where we were talking at halftime. On the way in, Jeff got punched in the stomach. And it had to have been a grown man, because it took every bit of breath. He'd come back and Coach, what got punched? And I stood and talked to him, and he got better. That was the best football half that he's ever played. And I was going to talk to his dad if we could punch him before Manatee, but he said not. The next two is Gene Peters and Bo Alligood. We've been friends, and our kids have played football all along. They backed me, gave me support. Bo's son, Clint, is in heaven right now. And that kid was the toughest one I've ever had. He went to Chattanooga, and the coaches were kind of talking to Jeff. He's too small. How's he going to play? After the first scrimmage, he started 2 straight years. He was tough. We, Billy Michael, he was assistant coach. He's the smartest coach I've ever been around. He was a coordinator, the best offense that's been at Choctaw. When I left, I was Dwight's offensive coordinator, and he took my place. Southern Miss guy, and the coaches loved him more than me. He caught 94 passes for 1,600-something yards and 12 touchdowns. Well, I didn't. I caught 1, so that's what I'm saying about that. Next, I'd like Lionel's wife, Jamie. She was 3-year starter on the Penn State basketball team. She's originally from Raleigh, North Carolina. She was an academic All-American, and her senior year they won the NIT. And he is like me. We lucked up and found great women. My daughter Summer and her best friend and my best friend Tim, they came in from Napa. Dr. Preston wanted to see, Brooke was coming up, his daughter said, why don't we start a girls training program? And we did. And it wasn't to see how cute you are, how beautiful you are. Those girls were in, you can ask the guys, they were in there wrapping ankles, patching cuts, coming on the field. I put one of them all the time and blowing, because we had the same practice schedule from every day, adjusted. They'd blow the horn, went a water break, individual, and she did a great job, and it was a pleasure for me to have both my kids there in Daytona at that time. Judd Inglet was Lionel's, they've been friends since knee-high. They live by us. They live by each other now, matter of fact. That's Mickey Inglet's son. He's been in the Hall of Fame. And I think I left one out, and that's my wife, Patty. She followed me around and supported me, and she was my backbone, and I couldn't have done without her. I was very lucky to find her in Hattiesburg, and we came down here, and we met and lived with all the people like you, beautiful community. And then I'll say something real quick about our winter workouts. I was at a wedding, and I heard got a group of guys sitting around, and I'm not going to be much longer, but Chad was telling them, I remember that time Coach Arthur had us in the mat under the stadium. See, our field house burnt down. He said, I was laying on the ground with my nose and mouth sticking under the crack of the door trying to get air. He absolutely coal-mined them. And anyway, Patty and I, we've had some beautiful kids, and it's been a wonderful, I thank you she followed me from Hattiesburg to here, from here to Geneva, back to here. I left Choctaw 2 different times. I was climbing water towers when Buck got me a job with Frank Sorrells at Niceville. And I'll tell you something else. When I really started learning some football, there's that man right there, Jimmy Campbell. He was the head JV coach, and I was the assistant. He ran the offense, and I learned a lot of football from Jimmy. He went to Southern Miss and was unable to play because he tore up his knee. And back then, they didn't have orthoscopic. They cut you that long, you know. But anyway, I know I'm missing out on a lot of things, but I think I've said enough already. Thank you for this award. It's by far the best one I've ever received. Thank you very much. I want to say something else. I was a fan of Bear Bryant, and I remember when he took 111 and 35 came back from that summer camp, Junction, and these boys got junctioned. Chad was a member of the team. There's 31 of us went down there, and it's the smallest team you've seen. Our third game, I'm going to tell you this and I'm through. We played Bradenton Manatee at our place. We had to travel to, they came. Tommy Frazier, Nebraska, Heisman runner-up, was a quarterback. And they had a young tailback back there, Willie Taggart. Y'all have heard of him, Oregon, FSU. And they were ranked #1 in the country, #1 in the state. And the year before, they were state champions and won the championships. At the end of the first quarter, 21-0, the little guys. They didn't know what hit them. And anyway, getting to the championship, we scored 98 points and gave up 27. We went and played Riverview because what we did, our running, we did 10 hundreds, 10 50s on Monday, 8 and 8 on Tuesday, 6 and 6 on Wednesday. Every one of those kids, if we'd have played 2 more weeks, I'd have to put them in the concentration. They were shrinking. Sarasota's offensive line averaged 257. Ours, 172. And I'm telling you, Coach Arthur was a wrestling coach, and we tried to get all of them in wrestling. Our front 6 was wrestlers. They knew about leverage. Their fullback was 6'1", 220. He went to Georgia. Their quarterback was 6'4", 215. He went to Michigan State. And they scored 1 touchdown. And listen to this, it was a 94-yard, 22-play drive that lasted 11 minutes and 9 seconds. They took up most of the first quarter and into the second. There was no long runs. Them little guys fought them and fought them. Matter of fact, when they scored, it was like 4th and a foot, and the fullback might have got 2 foot. And we had a goal line stand, and of course we ended up beating them. But it was a dream, and I could go on, and I'm missing out on a lot I wrote down, but I think I've said enough. Thank you all.
Yeah, Coach, I think me as an individual, I brought down that average another 20 pounds. And I can blame it on you then, because all those workouts, that's why I was so light back then. If you'd have let me be the fat kid that I really wanted to be, we might have brought that average up just a bit. But I could tell you I was very blessed to be one of your players and a better man because of it. You taught us so much more than football, and I watched you transform countless young men into better players, students, sons, citizens, etc. It's an honor to be involved in your induction. And now we know where all those workouts came from, all the leg lifts, all that stuff. Just thank God you didn't do that one where you're talking about getting the knockout drill. Very happy we didn't do that. And another past president who wasn't here today, Drew Espy, last year's past president, he wanted to be here. You know, as a past president, you get your medal, you get this gold badge, which is what it's all about, because then you don't have to do a lot of responsibilities. But the only thing he wanted to do is he basically, what I said and what you hear from men like Mike Turner and Jeff and others is how much better people you made us. He wanted to reiterate that, so we'll pass that on from Drew. So thank you very much and congratulations, Coach. Next thing, I would like to introduce Mr. Bill Valona. He will be inducting our next inductee, Mr. Houston McTear. And Bill can tell you a bit about himself, but he was a writer for the Pensacola News-Journal many years, and I think his description is this was kind of the capstone and pinnacle of his career, is writing a story about our next inductee, Mr. Houston McTear. So, Bill?
Putting this water here just in case I need it. Thank you, Chad. Congratulations, Coach. there's no way now I could top those stories. So, but those were some classics. When I got here in 1987, I joined the Pensacola News Journal. You were one of the names somebody said, hey, you got to meet this guy, you got to go see them play. It was you were one of the magical names. We've been blessed with some unbelievable high school football coaches, as you all are aware of. One of them, of course, coaches at Baker High School right now, Matt Brunson, and they won the state title, as everybody's aware. I want to brag just a second about that, because that was their 5th state championship. Only 13 schools in Florida have won more state championships than Baker. So when you think about, we've got a state of 600 to 700 football playing high schools, and Baker is in that class. Of course, some of Baker's alumni are here. Met, of course, Charles, George, who inspired our inductee when he was a young boy. This is an incredible honor to me to be able to be in front of you and introduce him and induct him into the Hall of Fame. I want to thank the family. This organization is tremendous. I've been, down here many, many times for the media opportunities that you all have had. You all have done an incredible job, 52 years. It's special. So when I got the call that they would like me to induct Houston McTear, I mean, this is a tremendous honor for me. My connection to Houston McTear is just simple. In 2018, in July, it was the 40th anniversary of Houston appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated. We thought that might be the appropriate time to kind of retrace his life and do something special on Houston McTear. And they said, Bill, you know about Houston McTear? And I said, oh yeah, I know about Houston McTear. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Houston is 2 years older than me. But when I was in high school is when, Houston became a world famous, really. He set a world record in high school. And back then, now remember, you didn't have ESPN, you didn't have social media, you had no internet. The only way you got information was the newspaper, radio, and ABC had a wide world sports program, and I think Houston was part of that. But I remember as classmates, we were all huge sports fans, and they said, hey, do you hear this guy, Houston McTear? Where is Baker, Florida? And so everybody's like looking around, like nobody knew where, but that's how far back, that name was magical. And as Charles informed me, Houston's birthday was Saturday, and he was, I'm telling you, we've been blessed in our area, as you all know, from Pensacola to Panama City, to have had athletes come out of here that are not only famous in this area, and they not only are famous in the state of Florida, but they're famous throughout the world. They're famous across America. And Houston McTear is one of those. Houston McTear, in track and field circles in this country, that name is special. And I am just, grateful to be part of this and honor his legacy. The day that I was at Baker High School, I'd researched his background and met a gentleman by the name of Danny Thomas. And he had been a longtime employee of Okaloosa County School District. And Matt Brunson said, hey, Danny knows where this sawmill was, and he knows where Houston grew up. So I said, well, Danny, we had a photographer with us. Danny had a truck. He said, hey, just follow me down. So we turned off Highway 4 down what once was a road but was no longer a road. And his truck, I'm behind, so I hear this truck just bouncing. And I'm like, where are we going? There's woods, there's no sign of human life anywhere. Like, where are we going here? And finally, truck stops, you couldn't drive any further. And we get out, and it was just incredibly eerie. That was where the sawmill was. The sawmill had remnants still there. There was still hauled out buildings there, abandoned office. It's, of course, hot as heck. It's July, bugs everywhere. We get out, I'll never forget this. Danny looks at the railroad track in front of us, and he looks across the railroad track, and there's just woods. And he said, right there was his house. That's where he lived. And I thought, huh? What? And he said, yeah, that's where the houses were. They worked, everybody worked at this sawmill right here. And so this is how Houston McTear became a world-class sprinter, by running alongside this railroad track. His father, George, and you know this, he got off work at the sawmill, and Houston would meet him, and they'd race every day back home, back across that track. And the train that would go through there at a certain time every day, the conductor of that train knew Houston, of course, young boy, knew he was there waiting to race the train. So he'd blow the horn, and then Houston would just take off. But I thought, my God, how in the world did a guy racing a train along a railroad track get to be the fastest man in the world and rise into world greatness like that? It's just it's unbelievable just listening to this. And so George was a great football player at Baker High School. And one day, George was featured in the Fort Walton, the Northwest Florida Daily News, and Houston said, George, I guess this is the truth. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to get in the paper. And lo and behold, of course, from that moment and the inspiration that Houston had around him, he incredibly rose into really one of the greatest American sprinters of all time. And I'm telling you, of all the stories I have written, to see where he grew up and how he trained. I mean, Baker High School didn't have a rubber track or any, it was a road, basically, that they converted. And how he got to be this good without, he was self-taught. I mean, he raced and run. He loved to run. He was gifted, but he worked at it. And to go from, it's one thing to be good in high school, but I'm telling you, when you're the best in America, that's incredible. And so, when you think about Houston McTear, I tell you, somebody with his greatness, they're usually summed up in just a couple things. And to this day, he is the only person, the only male athlete in Florida high school track and field history to have won the 100-yard, back then it was the 100-yard dash, and the 220-yard dash. He won it all 4 years. All 4 years. That's eight titles. No one has ever done that ever again. And I don't think it's ever going to be matched. In 1975, when his name really rose, he ran a 9.0 second time in the 100-yard dash. Now, folks, that remains the best all time in American history. Now, that is how great this guy was. When he ran in the Olympic trials in 1976, the U.S. Olympic trials, he ran a 10.16 in the 100 meters, which is longer than 100 yards, of course. That remains the third fastest time in American history to this day. So, unfortunately, right after that, Houston was injured, couldn't participate in the 1976 U.S. Olympics. 1980, after he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the fastest man in the world, after America started, American sports people started to go, Houston McTear. Well, that is when, unfortunately, the United States boycotted the Olympics because of the Russians, Soviet Union, USSR, and all of that unrest. So the U.S. did not participate in the 1980 Olympics. I am convinced if Houston was in those games, we'd be talking about a gold medal winner right now. And I really feel sad that this man never got to be, an Olympic gold medal winner, because he was that good. And just watching the film of him, there's, so many great stories. One of them at Baker High School where the coach, he played a little football. Thanks to George and others, he was inspired to play a little football. The Florida Gators actually offered him a scholarship to play for their team. They felt like, guy this fast, we could use him. We can make him a receiver, running, whatever. We can have him. But he loved track. But he knew that track would be his future. But one of the days, I think it was his senior year, the idea was somebody owned a quarter horse at Baker in the community, and they thought it'd be a neat idea to have Houston run against a horse. So at halftime of the game, Houston did run against a horse. I said, "You're gonna be kidding me!" I'm hearing this story. Like, did this actually happen? And Matt Brunson, the football coach, was 8 or 9 years old. He said, "Bill, I was there. It happened. He ran against a horse." And I thought, well, that's unbelievable. The next most unbelievable thing I heard, probably, to me, I can't even fathom this, but Houston was to run at Gulf Breeze High School. And Robert Freeman was the coach. He became the athletic director at Pace High School. Well, it was raining that day. So the school bus pulls up with Baker High's track and field team. And the coach says, "Hey, I'm not letting Houston run in this. This is, no, can't do it." And Robert said, "Look, all these people are here." Because back then, when Houston McTear ran in high school, they packed the bleachers. Well, so he says, "Can you just try to let them run the 100? We won't even have one. We'll just put them in. We'll just have the race. We'll just run the race." He goes, "Well, all right, but you're not going to take warm-ups. He's just going to take it. We're just going to do it." So Houston takes off his warm-up outfit. He not only wins the race, but he ran a time that was so good, it probably would have been a world record, but they had handheld stopwatches and they're looking at the clock. No way, this couldn't be the time he ran. And this is how great the guy was. They didn't have electronic timing back then. It was all done by hand stopwatches, and people would say, "Huh? He couldn't have run this fast." But when 3 stopwatches say that was the time, well, then that was the time. So I am so honored. I tell you, you all are blessed to have him as a legacy in this community. I'm hoping that, some more things can be done to honor Houston's legacy, because I'm telling you, you're talking about somebody that not only transcended Florida sports, but he was in his day, he was one of America's greatest track and field athletes. And when you consider his background, when you consider how he trained, the fact that Muhammad Ali came down here to this community to sign him to a contract because they knew, hey, this guy's special, and we got to get this guy. And it's just amazing. I keep going back to my memory of that train track and Danny Thomas showing me right across these trestles where it all happened. I said, it's unbelievable how a guy gets this good. How did a guy get this great doing this? And he did it. So again, I'm thankful the family is here. I want to tell you, it's a tremendous honor for me to have written that story. It's a tremendous honor to have known about him way back in high school, 1,000 miles from here, and then come to find out where this all started. A guy that we were talking about as classmates in, the early, middle 1970s. And I want to say to you all, it's just tremendous that you all are honoring his legacy. And with that, I'm going to formally induct Houston McTear into the All Sports Association Hall of Fame. And thank you all.
Wow, it's beautiful. I wish he was here to actually see this. I can tell you some stories that, wow, it would be unreal. I remember one day we was going to the store with my parents, and right before we crossed the track, there was this kid laying on the side of the road, all cramped up. It was dark. And when we get up there, it was my brother, Houston. And so my parents gets out the car, and I was like, wow. I said, I want to be like that. You know, little did I know, someday I would probably catch these cramps as well, you know? So one day I had a long day at work, you know, and I came home and I was cramping. And my sister, Brenda, Dot, they saw me laying there on the couch, all cramped up, and they thought nothing of it. You want us to call paramedics? I was like, nah. I said, just let me get in the right position. It'll go away. It'll go away. And so they just left me. But, you know, that was just one of the stories. But, you know, eventually I went to Los Angeles where Houston was. And everybody in here know him as Houston. We know him as Edward. You know, his name was Houston Edward. So when I would say Edward out in California, everybody would be like, Edward. And he would always say, you don't know me that well. So no one could call him Edward. But, you know, it was just a remarkable time being there before he left and moved to Sweden, because his wife, she was the women's track coach where I was at Santa Monica, which I was there. I worked out with Lee Evans, and I was coached by Tommy Smith at the college there. So they sent me there, but I had a tremendous time. It was wonderful. I was proud of everything that he accomplished, all of his accolades, but I love being his brother, you know. I never thought of him as a celebrity. I just thought of him as this big brother that just showed me the world, you know. Even on that little dirt road, I would go off with him, and there was a 5-year difference, and I didn't know if he was just showing me this, everything that happened on this little dirt road, or he was ensuring my parents he was going to come back to the house, you know. So, but it was just wonderful times there. And we was just one loving family. There was 8 of us. There was 4 boys, 4 girls. There are 6 of us here today. And we still have that love. I don't think we ever fuss or argue about anything. It's just the way we was raised. And it's still that way today. And this is such an honor. I wish he was here along with my mother, my father, and my sister. But it's great. And I want to thank everyone for recognizing him for what he did. And to reflect on what he was saying about people came, if you look at this picture here, those are not bleachers where all those people are. That was how many people that actually come out to these events. And it was like that at so many events. And I was there at the game when he raced that horse, but I was younger. I didn't really see it. You know, you go to a football game, you had those little kids playing in the end zone. Well, I was one of those kids, so I didn't really get to see it, you know. So, but I remember that game, and George, he had left. He was on to college, and after that, I think I started playing and running as well. And I was one of the top guys in the school up until then, till I came out myself, and it was just wonderful. I was never known as Charles. I was always known as Houston's little brother, you know, and I was like, well, I guess I'll never get out this shadow, you know. So even when I went to California, nobody called me Charles. They always called me Lil Houston, you know. So I was always known as Little Houston from day one up until today, basically. You know, I get called Charles now, you know, but way back then I was always Little Houston, you know. And everybody said we talked alike, sound alike, which I didn't think so, but we had a pretty special bond, you know. Everybody thought that I was older and I always talked to him about the things that he was doing, but I was like, I'm his brother, I'm not his father, you know. And it was great because he was such a household name. And I remember when my boys was born and we was trying to get to UCLA, and we got stuck in traffic in Beverly Hills, right there on Wilshire. And so when the paramedics come and they asked my wife, and I always told her, I said, well, when someone hear that name, they're gonna always start to ask questions, right? So they asked her what her name was, and so they started asking, are you related to Houston? And I'm like, wow. I was like, man, we're trying to get to the hospital. We're trying to get to the hospital, you know? So they were sitting there. I remember him when he ran at the Sun Kissed Me. I remember at the Pepsi invitation. I'm like, we got to get to the hospital. She's having a baby, you know? So, and I told my son that all the time, you know. I said, whenever, you know, a lot of people, if they hear that name, they're going to start to ask questions. And for sure, and they still do to this day, you know, those that's elder and remember. So I really am proud of all of his accomplishments and all the things that he's done, but I love more than anything being his brother. And thank you all.
Thank you, Charles. That was great. For many years, my mother volunteered me to work at the Max Bruner Relays over at Choctaw. And over those years working, I heard countless tales of the legend of Houston McTear. Racing trains, racing a horse, blowing the doors off of his competition. And as a member of this committee, I began to research Houston myself and really to learn that legend was real. He did race trains. He did once race a horse and won, because I think all of us are wondering, I heard you say he raced a horse, but he beat the horse as well. Yeah, and he, you know, setting state and national high school records that still stand. He was actually inducted into the National High School Hall of Fame this past summer, and also setting that world record, qualifying for the Olympics. So he faced, you know, at times in his life, he faced tremendous despair and adversity, and once again still rose to elite competition, winning the World European Championships. So, you know, his life and legend are really the stuff that tales are portrayed in Hollywood. You consider things like Seabiscuit and Cinderella Man with these amazing comeback stories and triumph stories. You know, Houston's is right there with him. And I think they even considered making a movie about him that was going to be called 9 Seconds. So hopefully one day that'll go down. But you know, for those who actually competed against Houston, he was known to be humble, introspective, and very, very fast. So we are very proud to induct our humble champion, Houston McTear, into our Hall of Fame. All right. So Pastor Shinnick, will you please come up and close us out with a prayer? And then we'll have one last thing after that to do our unveiling.
This has really been a pleasure. I love this. And I'm new to this community of Association Sports, and if you Google my last name, my dad played in the NFL for 13 years. My brother's down the road at Pensacola, leading the West Florida to national championships. My nephew's running track at USC right now, and if you scroll way down, you might see a little bit about my football career. But anyways, I love this, and I love what I get to do next. Faith in sports has been a huge part of my life. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. It really is an honor. Congratulations to the two inductees. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for just really, again, the resilience that's in this room because of those long, hard practices that really make all these accomplishments just a result of the 2 days in the summer, back when that was legal, and the sweat and the grind and the effort, and that's what's made great men and great fathers and great husbands, and Lord, that's just an attribute to your call on the lives in this room. So we thank you so much for your grace and your favor. Continue to bless the rest of this day and as well as this weekend of all these young people being honored on their journey towards Hall of Fame moments like this. We need you and we trust you. Pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
All right, thank you, Chris. And for our inductees and their representatives, will you please meet us over here for the unveiling? Well, thank you for joining us, and those will go into our trophy case in the convention center across the street.